Komang, all Charlie Smith, Jong Benji, Georgia Strait. I'm glad to be here for another week of WOW TV and the Georgia Strait, and I'm going to be going over some of the big stories that have been in our newspaper and in our community over the past week. So I'm going to start actually with a controversy around the Broadway commercial SkyTrain station, and that is the busiest SkyTrain station west of Toronto. And what's happening there is the city has a plan where they want to build a lot more densification and put more towers in there, because they want to concentrate development around transit stations. But some of the residents in the area are concerned about the scope of the development. So what the city has done as part of a draft plan for the Grandview Woodland area is 11 towers. One of them will be up to 36 stories. 4 of them will be up to 26 stories, and another 6 of them will be up to 22 stories. So that would be basically, it would start to look like Metrotown around the commercial Broadway station. And so what's happened is the citizens are reacting. They're saying this is too much development. Right now, the transit system, as anyone who's ridden it, it's very crowded on those 99B bus line that goes out to UBC from the commercial Broadway station. So the city has decided that it's going to call, they're having a workshop on July 6th. And at this workshop, citizens will be invited to offer their solutions. But the city has goals in terms of the number of people that it wants to live there. And I was talking to Matt Shalito, who's the assistant director of planning at the City of Vancouver, and he is raising the possibility of, well, maybe we don't need to do so many towers, that we can still get the same number of people moving into the area, but possibly with lower rise developments and more developments. So this is one of the hot development issues that we're going to see unfold over the summer. The Grandview Woodland area actually is quite a large part of East Vancouver. It on the western side is Clark Drive. It goes down to the waterfront at Burrard Inlet, goes up to Grandview Highway, and then to the east to Nanaimo Street. So the Grandview Woodland area plan is quite large, but the one area they're focusing on right now is just at the SkyTrain station. A former planner has come out publicly who worked for the city and said there was talk of doing this around the year 2000, and there was intense neighborhood opposition, so that never went ahead. So he's kind of wondering why we're seeing such a massive development plan right now. The other issue that is kind of underlying this is there's a bit of a competition between Surrey and Vancouver for who could get the next rapid transit line. So the mayor of Vancouver, Gregor Robertson, favors an underground subway from Broadway Commercial all the way to UBC, and that would cost about $3 billion. The mayor of Surrey, Diane Watts, favors 3 light rail lines that would go from Surrey Central. One would go down the King George Highway to Newton, one would go along 104th to Guildford, and the other would go down the Fraser Highway to Langley. Well, right now the provincial government, which plays the major role in transit funding, will make a determination over the next few years of which one to support. At the moment, it's looking like Surrey is in pretty good shape because it elected more MLAs in the last election with the BC Liberal Party. And the voters of Vancouver Point Grey did not re-elect the Premier, Christy Clark, and that's where the line would go. If it were to go to UBC, it would go right through Vancouver Point Grey. So I think what's happening is that Surrey is in a good position to be first in line for the next rapid transit project. But if Vancouver and the city of Vancouver adds a tremendous amount of density around the commercial Broadway station, that will enhance their arguments because the buses are going to be more crowded. And it's the busiest transit corridor, I believe, in North America, actually, along that Broadway route. But in the meantime, if they approve this and add density to that area, it's going to cause more buses to pass by the transit users. So this is going to have a real effect on people who use the bus service in Vancouver, particularly going east-west to UBC. The Grandview Area Woodland Plan, the Grandview Woodland Area Plan is It's in the discussion stage now. Staff will bring back a final recommendation to council in the fall or the winter, and then the city council will approve it or ask for changes. The challenge for Vision Vancouver, which is the main political party running Vancouver at the moment, is its strongest base of support is actually in the Grandview Woodland area. So it has to be very careful. And one other aspect of the plan that is causing some concern is what's going to happen to Commercial Drive. The city has proposed that most of Commercial Drive would stay the same, not have changed building heights, but there would be taller buildings allowed at Commercial and Hastings, Commercial and East First Avenue, and Commercial and Venables Street, and then south of East Fifth Avenue, which is when you get to the transit area around the station. So this is one of the big stories that's happening right now, and it's one we're paying close attention to at the Georgia Strait. Another intriguing story that developed this week was the first time we've actually publicly heard a call for someone to replace Adrian Dix as leader of the BC NDP. And this was Ben West, who's a well-known environmentalist and community organizer in Vancouver. And he was telling our reporter Carlito Pablo that he thinks that George Heyman would be a terrific new leader for the BC NDP. And George Heyman is a strong environmentalist. He used to be executive director of the Sierra Club and the longtime president of the BC Government and Service Employees Union. George Heyman was elected for the first time in Vancouver Fairview, which is a fairly wealthy riding in the middle of Vancouver, kind of the west side of Vancouver. And so he's now in the legislature, and already one of his strongest supporters is saying that he should be the leader. At the moment, it looks like Adrian Dix would like to remain leader of the NDP. The legislative session opened this week, and the finance minister, Mike de Jong, announced $30 million in spending cuts in the new budget, and that's because economic growth has not been as great as they had previously anticipated before the election. Mike de Jong is saying that he has a balanced budget, and that's something the BC Liberals ran on. But the NDP finance critic, Mike Farnworth, is saying that the budget actually isn't balanced because they're doing asset sales, and they're raising almost $800 million through the sale of government properties, and that those sales haven't occurred yet, but they've already entered them as revenue on the government books. So in the eyes of the NDP, the budget is not balanced. In the eyes of the BC Liberals, the budget is balanced. And as far as the NDP goes in its leadership, in November, the members of the party will have a chance to vote on a leadership review and whether that will go ahead. At the moment, Adrian Dix is saying he's just going to keep doing his job as leader of the NDP, and that's what he was elected to do. But you can already see the sounds of and the signs that not all is well. A former Liberal MLA, former NDP MLA David Schreck for North Vancouver Lonsdale, is another well-known New Democrat who's calling for a leader to replace Adrian Dix, although he hasn't said who he favors.